The Christian in Complete Armor by William Grinnell. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 14, chapter 3, wherein is contained the third and last importancy of the word stand, and the Christian's duty of standing on his watch spoken to, why he is to watch and how he should. Thirdly, to stand. Here is opposite to sleep and sloth. Standing is a waking, watching posture. When the captain sees his soldiers lying secure upon the ground asleep, he bids, "Stand to your arms." That is, stand and watch. In some cases, it is death for a soldier to be found asleep, as when he is appointed to stand sentinel or the like. Now to sleep deserves death, because he is to wake that the whole army may sleep, and his sleep may cost them their lives. Therefore a great captain thought he gave that soldier but his due, whom he run through with his sword, because he found him asleep, when he should have stood sentinel, excusing his severity with this, that he left him but as he found him. I found him dead in sleep, and left him but asleep in death. Watchfulness is more needed for the Christian soldier than any other, because other soldiers fight with men that need sleep as well as themselves. But the Christian's grand enemy, Satan, is ever awake and walking his rounds, seeking whom he may surprise. And if Satan be always awake, it is dangerous for the Christian at any time to be spiritually asleep, that is, secure and careless. The Christian is seldom worst by this his enemy, but there is either treachery or negligence in the business. Either the unregenerate part betrays him, or his grace is not wakeful to make a timely discovery of him, so as to prepare for the encounter. The enemy is upon him before he is thoroughly awake to draw his sword. The saint's sleeping time is Satan's tempting time. Every fly darts venture to creep on a sleeping lion. No temptation so weak, but is strong enough to foil a Christian that is napping in security. Samson asleep, and Delilah cuts his locks. Saul asleep, and the spear is taken away from his very side, and he never the wiser. Noah asleep, and his graceless son has a fit time to discover his father's nakedness. Eutychus asleep and nods, and falls from the third loft and is taken up for dead. Thus the Christian asleep in security may soon be surprised so as to lose much of his spiritual strength, the joy of the Lord which is his strength, to be robbed of his spear, his armor, graces I mean, at least in the present use of them, and his nakedness discovered by graceless men, to the shame of his profession, as when bloody Joab could take notice of David's vain glory in numbering the people. Was not David's grace asleep? Yea, he may fall from a high loft of profession, so low into such scandalous practices that others may question whether there be any life of grace indeed in him. And therefore it behoves the Christian to stand wakefully. Sleep steals as insensibly on the soul as it doth on the body. The wise virgins fell asleep as well as the foolish, though not so soundly. Take heed thou dost not indulge thyself in thy hazy distemper, but stir thyself to action, as we bid one that is drowsy, stand up or walk. Yield to it by idleness and sloth, and it will grow upon thee. Bestir thyself in this duty, and that it will be over. David first awakes his tongue to sing, his hand to play on his harp, and then David's heart awakes also. Psalms 51 verse 8. The lion, it is said, when he first wakes, lashes himself with his tail, thereby to stir and rouse up his courage, and then away he goes after his prey. We have enough to excite and provoke us to use all the care and diligence possible. First, the Christian's work is too curious to be done well between sleeping and walking, and too important to be done ill and slumbered over, no matter how. He had need to be awake that walks upon the brink of a deep river or brow of a steep hill. The Christian's path is so narrow and the danger is so great that it calls for both a nimble eye to discern and a steady eye to direct, but a sleepy eye can do neither. Look upon any duty or grace, and you will find it lie between two extremes, alike dangerous. Faith, the great work of God, cuts its way between the mountain of presumption and gulf of despair. Patience, a grace so necessary that we cannot be without it a day, except we would be all that while besides ourselves. This keeps us that we fall neither into the sleepy epoxy of blockish stupidity, which deprives the creature of its senses, nor into a raging fit of discontent, which hath sense enough and too much to feel the hand of God, but deprives the man of his reason, that he turns again upon God and shoots back the Almighty's arrows on his fierce face in the flurry of his forward spirit. The like we might say of the rest, no truth but hath some error next door to her. No duty can be performed without approaching very near the enemy's quarters, who soon takes the alarm and comes out to oppose the Christian. And ought he not then to have always his heart on the watch? Secondly, the trouble of watching is not comparable to the advantage it brings. First, by this thou frustratest the designs Satan hath upon thee. It is worth watching to keep the house from robbing, much more the heart from rifling by the devil. Watch that ye enter not into temptation. Matthew chapter 26, verse 41. He buys his sleep dear, that pays his throat cutting for it. Yea, though the wound be not so deep, but may be cured at last. Thy not watching one night may keep thee awake many a night upon a more uncomfortable occasion. And hast thou not better wake with care to keep thyself from a mischief, than afterwards thy eyes be held open, whether thou wilt or not, with pain and anguish of the wound given thee in thy sleep? You know how sadly David was bruised by a fall got in his spiritual slumber. For what else was he, when in the eventide he rose from his bed and walked upon the roof of his house, like a man walking in his sleep? 2 Samuel 11, verse 2. And how many restless nights this brought over his holy knight's head, you may perceive by his own mournful complaints of this sin, which is the foot and sad burden of several mournful psalms. Secondly, by thy watchfulness thou shalt best learn the enemy of a sleepy state. One asleep is not sensible of his own snorting. How uncomely and troublesome to others it is, but he that is awake is apprehensive of both. The man asleep is not sensible, if laid naked by some that would abuse him, but he that is awake, observe, is ashamed and covers him. Thus, while thou art in a spiritual sense awake, thou canst not but observe many uncomely passages in the lives of those professors who do not watch their hearts, which will fill thy heart with pity to them to see how they are abused by Satan and their own passions, which like rude servants take this their own time to play their pranks in when they have made sure of their mistress. Grace, I mean, now laid aside. That should keep them in better rule. Yea, it will make the blood come into thy face for shame, to see how by their nakedness profession itself is fluted at by those that pass by, and see how it is with them. Well, what thou blushest to see, and pitiest to find in another, take heed it befall not thyself. If thou sufferest a spiritual slumber, to grow upon thee. Thou wilt be the man thyself, that all this may come upon, and what not besides. Sleep levels all. The wise man, then, is no wiser than a fool, to project for his safety, nor the strong man better than the weak, to defend himself. If slumber falls once upon thy eye, it is night to thee, and thou art, though the best of saints, but as other men, so far as this sleep prevails on thee. Thirdly, by thy watchfulness thou shalt invite such company in unto thee, as will make the time short and sweet, and that is thy precious Savior, whose sweet communication and discourse about the things of thy Father's kingdom will make thou shalt not grudge the ease sleepy Christian get, with the loss of such a heavenly entertainment as thou enjoyest. Who had not, that loves his soul better than his body, rather have David's song than David's sleep in the night? And who had not rather have Christ's comforting presence with a waking soul than his absence with the sleepy, slothful one? It is the watchful soul that Christ delights to be with and open his heart unto. We do not choose that for the time of giving our friends a visit when they are asleep in their beds. Nay, if we be with them and perceive they grow sleepy, we think it is time to leave them to their pillow, and verily Christ doth so too. Christ withdraws from the spouse till she be better awake, as a fitter time for her to receive his loves. Put the sweetest wine into the sleepy man's hand, and you are like to have it all spilled. Yea, but a purse of gold into his hand, and if you put it there, the man will hardly remember in the morning what you gave him overnight. Thus, in the sleepy state of his soul, both the Christian loses the benefit and Christ the praise of his mercy, and therefore Christ will stay to give out his choice favors when the soul is more wakeful, that he may both to the creature good, and his creature may speak good of him for it. Question: but how must a Christian stand upon his watch? Answer: first, constantly. The lamp of God in the tabernacle was to burn always. Exodus chapter 27, verse 20, and Exodus chapter 30, verse 8. That is, always in the night, which sense is favored by several other places. And I pray, what is our life in this world but a dark night of temptation? Take heed, Christian, that thy watch candle go not out in any part of this darksome time, lest thy enemy come upon thee in that hour. He can find thee, but not thou resist him in the dark. If once thy eye be shut in a spiritual slumber, thou art a fair mark for his wrath. And know, thou canst not be long off thy watch, but the devil will hear on it. And the devil then knew the apostles' sleeping time, and then he desires leave to willow them. Luke chapter 22. He saw they were in some disorder. The eye of their soul began to be heavy. The thief rises when honest men go to bed. The devil, I am sure, begins to tempt when saints cease to watch. When the staff is thrown away, then the wolf appears. When the soul puts her danger furthest off and lies most secure, then it is nearest. Therefore labor to be constant in thy holy care. The want of this spoils all. Some you shall have that after a great fall into a sin that hath bruised them sorely, will seem very careful for a time, where they set their foot, how they walk, and what company they come in. But as soon as the soreness of their consciences wear off, their watch is broke up, and they are as careless as ever, like one that is very careful to shut up his shop strongly, and may be set up late to watch it also for 2 or 3 nights after it hath been robbed, and then minds it no more. Others, in an affliction, or newly come out of the furnace, oh, how nice and scrupulous are they, while the smell of fire is about them, and the memory of their distress fresh. They are as tender of sinning as one that comes out of a hot, close room is of the air. They shrink at every breath of temptation stirring. But alas, how soon are they hardened to commit those sins without remorse, the bare motion of which but a little before did so trouble and afflict them. Josephus, in his Antiquities, tells us that the sons of Noah, for some years after the flood, dwelt on the top of high mountains, not daring to take up their habitation in the lower ground for fear of being drowned by another flood. Yet in process of time, seeing no flood came, they ventured down to the plain of Shinar, Shinar, where their former fear, we see, ended in one of the boldest, proudest attempts against God that the Son was ever to witness. The building, of a tower, whose top should reach heaven. Genesis chapter 11, verse 2 and 3. They, who at first were so maidenly and fearful as not to venture down their hills for fear of drowning, now have a design to secure themselves against all future attempts from the God of heaven himself. Thus oft we see God's judgments leave such an impression in men's spirits that for a while they stand aloof from their sins, as they on their hills afraid to come down to them. But when they see fair weather continue and no clouds gather towards another storm, then they can descend to their old wicked practices and grow more bold and heaven-daring than ever. But if thou wilt be a Christian indeed, keep on thy watch still, remit not in thy care, thou hast well run hitherto. O lie not down like some lazy traveler by the wayside to sleep, but reserve thy resting time till thou gettest home out of all danger. Thy God rested not till the last day's work in the creation was finished, neither do thou cease to wake or work, till thou canst say thy salvation work is finished. Secondly, watch universally. First, watch thy whole man. The honest watchman walks the rounds and compasses the whole town. He does not limit his care to this house or that. So do thou watch over thy whole man. A pore in thy body is a door wide enough to let in a disease if God command, and any one faculty of thy soul or member of thy body to let in an enemy that may endanger thy spiritual welfare. Alas, how few set the watch round. Some one faculty is not guarded, or the member of the body not regarded. He that is scrupulous in one, you shall find him secure in another. Maybe thou settest the watch at the door of thy lips, that no impure communication offends the ears of men. But how is the Lord's watch kept at the temple of door of thy heart? 2 Chronicles chapter 23, verse 6. Is not that defiled with lust? Thou perhaps keepest thy hand out of thy neighbor's purse, and foot from going on a thievish errand to thy neighbor's house. But does not thy envious heart grudge him what God allows him? When thou prayest, thou art very careful, thy outward posture be reverent. But what eye hast thou on thy soul, that it performs its part in the duty? Secondly, watch in everything. If the apostle bids in everything give thanks, then it behooves us in everything to watch, that God may not lose his praise, which he doth in most for want of watching. No action so little or most, but we may in it do God or the devil some service, and therefore none too little for our care to be bestowed on. He was a holy man indeed, of whom it was said that he ate and drank eternal life. The meaning is, he kept such holy watch over himself in these things, that he was in heaven while doing them. There is no creature so little among all God's works, but his providence watches over it, even to a sparrow and a hair. Let there be no word or work of thine over which thou art not watchful. Thou shalt be judged by them, even to thy idle words and thoughts. And wilt thou not have care of them? Thirdly, watch wisely, which thou shalt do, if thou knowest where thou shouldest keep strict watch, and that must be first in the weightiest duty of the command. Tithing of cumin and anise must not be neglected, but take heed that thou dost not neglect the weightiest things of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. Making your preciseness in the less a blind for your horrible wickedness in the greater. Begin at the right end of your work, Christian, by placing your chief care amongst those main duties to God and man, in his law and gospel, in his worship, and in thy daily course which when thou hast done, neglect not circumstantials. Should a master, before he goes forth, charge a servant to look to his child and trim his house up handsomely against he comes home, when he returns, will he thank his servant for sweeping his house and making it trim as he bids him? If he find his child thoroughly neglected, fallen into the fire, and by it killed or crippled? No, sure he left his child with him, as his chief charge to watch the other should have yielded, if both could not be done. There hath been a great zeal of late among us about some circumstances of worship. But who looks to the little child, the main duties of Christianity, I mean? Was there ever less love, charity, self-denial, heavenly mindedness, or the power of holiness in any of its several walks than in this sad age of ours? Alas, these, like the child, are in great danger of perishing in the fire of contention and division, which a perverse zeal is less things hath kindled among us. Secondly, be sure thou art watchful more than ordinary over thyself in those things where thou findest thyself weakest and hast been oftenest foiled. The weakest part of the city needs the strongest guard, and in our bodies the tenderest part is most observed and kept warmest. And I should think it were strange if thy fabric or grace stands so strong and even that thou shouldest not soon perceive which side needs the shore most, by some inclination of it one way more than another. Thy body is not so firm that thou findest this humor overabound in that part craves faster than another, and so mayest thou in thy soul. Well, take counsel in the thing, and what thou findest weakest watch most carefully. It is thy head that is weak, thy judgment, I mean. Watch thyself, and come not amongst those that drink no wine, but that which thy weak parts cannot bear. Sepharic notions and high-flown opinions, and do not think thyself much wronged to be forbidden their cup. Such strong wine is more heady than hearty, and they that trade most with it are not found in the healthiest tempers of their souls, no more than they that live most of strong waters are for their bodies. Is thy impotency in thy passions? Indeed, we are weak as they are strong and violent. Now watch over them, as one that dwells in a thatched house would do of every spark that flies out of his chimney, lest it should light on it and set all on fire. O take heed what speeches come from thy mouth, or from any thou conversest with. This is the little instrument sets the whole course of nature on flame. When our neighborhood house is on fire, we cast water on our roof or cover it with a wet sheet. When the flame breaks out at another's mouth, now look thou throwest water on thy own hot spring, some cooling, wrench-quenching scriptures and arguments ever carry with thee for that purpose, and so in any other particular as thou findest thy weakness. End of chapter 3, having been read by Peter John Parisi. Also, none of my audios are copyrighted. Please feel free to make as many copies as you desire to the glory of God.